There, people. Happy Monday. Today we are going to be working on two things. The first thing that you guys are going to be doing is very familiar. You guys are going to be using context clues to determine the meaning of new words. The second thing you guys are going to be doing is you're going to be reading, and then afterwards you have some questions on Socrative about the chapter. Okay? All right, so this is your vocabulary, right? These are new words. I'm going to go over the definitions. After I do that, you guys will be using these words to do the fill-ins, okay? So remember, when you go to do the fill-ins, you need to make sure that you're using context clues. And again, these are the strategies that you can use, okay? So again, sometimes in some of these definitions, you'll see, I'm sorry, some of these examples, you'll see the definition there, and it'll be right plain for you to see. So example, discrimination or unfairly targeting one or more groups by those who perceive themselves to be superior can cause distress. Again, the word discrimination is actually defined here, right? Somebody who's unfairly targeting one or more groups. Sometimes you'll see a synonym. Again, synonyms are words that have the same exact meaning. So this example here, when people know they are vulnerable or defenseless, they tend to protect themselves to avoid harm. So again, this word defenseless has the same meaning as vulnerable. Okay, sometimes they'll give you an example of an unknown word so that it'll give you a clue about what it means. So here, vulnerable people such as young children, the elderly, or handicapped individuals might have protections under certain laws. Okay, so young children, elderly, or handicapped are examples of vulnerable people. Okay, sometimes you'll see the opposite word meaning. So it's called an antonym. So opposite information about the unknown word could be offset by words and phrases such as like the word unlike, as opposed to, or different. So if I see the word unlike or opposed to or different in there, I know that the word near it is the opposite meaning. So discrimination as opposed to fairness for all people can have damaging effects. I know that fairness is the opposite of discrimination. And then the last one is sometimes you'll see an analogy, a simile, or a metaphor. It's a comparison of the word. And then you have to determine what it means that way. Okay, so vulnerable people, like fragile glass, in need of care and attention. The fact that I'm comparing these people to being fragile shows me that that's what vulnerable means. Okay, all right, so let's go up to the top and see what these words actually mean. Okay, so the first word is beckoned. Okay, beckoned is a verb. Okay, it's an action word. It means to make a gesture with your hand, arm, or head to encourage someone to come near, right? So if you want somebody to come close to you, you beckon them. The second word is skittish. Skittish is a descriptive word, it's an adjective. It means very easily excitable or scared. It's used a lot of the time when they're referring to like horses. Horses can become very skittish, they get afraid. Okay, the next word is propaganda, which you should be familiar with. Okay, it's information, especially of being a biased or misleading nature, used to promote a political cause or point of view. Again, propaganda, again, are techniques, right? Some things that people use to kind of get you to take their side in some way, right? So I want to make you believe what I believe, or I want you to do something. So I'm going to give you information that encourages you to believe the same way that I do. That's what propaganda is. The second word is pronounced stupefied. Okay. You can almost think of in the beginning, it almost sounds like stupid, and it's basically to be made stupid, right? So if you make someone unable to think or feel properly, you're stupefied, right? So I am stupefied by your crazy actions. The next word is malnourished. Okay. So if you're malnourished, you're suffering from a lack of food, right? It's almost like you're starving. You need stuff in your body to keep you healthy. That's what being malnourished is when you don't. The word revelation is the next one. Okay, revelation is a surprising and previously unknown fact, especially one that is made known in a dramatic way. So it almost sounds like the word reveal. Okay, so a revelation is when something gets revealed. You're like, ooh, I just found something out, right? So if there's like a crazy twist in a movie and we weren't expecting it, it would be a revelation when that happens. The next word here is congeal. That's how it's pronounced. Okay, it's an action word. It means to solidify or coagulate, especially by cooling. A lot of the times when you think of the word congeal, you think of like jello or blood, right? So when blood or jello cools, it like hardens. That's what congealing means. The next word is notion. Okay, the notion is a conception or a belief about something. It's like an idea. Okay, so when you have an idea, you have a notion of something. Grimace is how you pronounce the next word. Okay, grimace is an ugly, twisted expression on a person's face, typically expressing disgust, pain, or wry amusement. Yeah, so you might a lot of the times you grimace when you hurt yourself. Okay, so it's like a face that's like twisted. And the last word is botched. What botched means is to carry out badly or carelessly. So when you really screw something up badly, that's when you botch it. Okay. All right. So what you're going to do now is you're going to take these words and you're going to put them in the fill-ins. Okay. All right. So I'm going to have you pause your work. Okay. So pause it here so that you can do that. When you're done, unpause it, and then we'll continue reading. Okay. Now, something that you should know about is that for some reason the actual reading cut off part of the reading, so I had to type it on two sheets. So we're going to read first, and then I'm going to move on to a second sheet so that you can finish the chapter. Okay, so all right, now we're on chapter 27. Left you on a bit of a cliffhanger. Remember, he goes over to Jen's house, and when he gets there, somebody shocks him and surprises him with a gun. Okay, Luke stifled his instinct to run. He turned around as slowly as he could. Guns had been outlawed for everyone but government officials long before he was born. But he recognized the object pointed at him from books and Dad's descriptions. Dad had always talked about hunting rifles and shotguns, big guns to bring down deer or wolves. This gun was smaller, meant to kill humans. All that flashed through Luke's mind before he looked beyond the gun to the man holding it. He was tall and fleshy, his expensive clothes only partially hiding his bulk. Luke had seen him only from a distance before. "You're Jen's dad," he said. "I didn't ask who I was," the man snapped. "Who are you?" Luke exhaled slowly. So if I'm thinking about that Luke exhaling slowly, he's probably not as nervous as he was before because he recognizes that the person in front of him is Jen's dad. "A friend of Jen's," he said cautiously. Only because he was watching very, very closely did he see the man lower the gun by a fraction of an inch. So obviously, the fact that he said this and the guy lowers the gun kind of shows you that he disarmed him a little bit. "Please," Luke said. "I just want to know where she is." This time the man clearly relaxed his gun hand. Again, now the father knows that this is obviously a friend. He circled around behind Luke and he snapped off the computer. "Jen says you have to park the hard drive before you do that," Luke said. "How do you know about Jen?" the man asked. He narrowed his eyes. Luke blinked. The man was bargaining, he realized, offering to negotiate. He wanted something from Luke before he would tell Luke anything about Jen. But what? "I'm a third child, too," Luke said finally. The man's expression didn't change, but Luke thought that he saw a flicker of interest in his eyes. "I'm a neighbor. I found out about her and I started coming over when I could." "How did you know she was here?" the man said. "I saw." Luke didn't want to get her in trouble. "I saw lights when I knew everybody was gone. I guessed I really wanted there to be another third child for me to meet." "So Jen was careless," the man said, with an edge to his voice that Luke didn't understand. "No," Luke said uncertainly. "I was observant." The man nodded only to accept Luke's answer. Then he sat down in the chair by the computer desk and rested the gun on his leg. Luke took that as a sign that the conversation might last long enough for him to find out something. "Did Jen teach you how to disable our alarm system?" the man asked. Luke saw no point in lying. "Yes." "But it must have screwed up since you came." "No," the man said. "If you screwed up, the security guards would have come. But I have it set so I'm automatically notified if the system shut down while I'm away. Given the circumstances, I decided to investigate myself." Luke longed to ask what circumstances he meant, but the man was already asking another question. "So what else did you and Jen do together?" the man said. Luke couldn't understand why he sounded so accusatory. Nothing," Luke said. "I mean, we talked a lot. She showed me the computer. She wanted me to go to the rally, but I was too scared." Too late, Luke thought, to wonder if the man knew about the rally. Was Luke betraying Jen's confidence? But the man didn't seem surprised. He was studying Luke as intently as Luke had been studying him. "Why didn't you stop her?" the man asked. "Stop Jen? That's like trying to stop the sun," Luke said. The man gave Luke the faintest of smiles, one that contained no happiness. "Just remember that," he said. "So where is she?" Luke asked. The man looked away. "Jen's." His voice broke. "Jen's no longer with us. She's dead," the man said harshly. Somehow Luke had known without wanting to know. He still stumbled backwards in shock. He bumped into the couch and sagged into it. "No," he said. "Not Jen. No, you're lying." His ears roared. He thought crazy things. "This is a dream, a nightmare. I'll wake myself. Wake up." He remembered Jen talking a mile a minute, gesturing wildly. How could she be dead? He tried to picture her lying still, not moving, dead. It was impossible. The man was shaking his head helplessly. I'd give anything to have her back, he whispered, but it's true, I saw. They gave us the body. Special privilege for a government official. His voice was so bitter, Luke could barely listen. And we couldn't even bury her in the family plot. Couldn't take a bereavement day off of work. Couldn't tell anyone why we're going around with red eyes and aching hearts. No, we just had to pretend to be the same old family of four we'd always been. How? Luke asked. How did she die? He was thinking if the car had wrecked, it wouldn't be so bad. Or maybe it had nothing to do with the rally. Maybe she just got really sick. They shot her, Jen's father said. They shot all of them. All 40 kids at that rally, gunned down right in front of the president's house. The blood flowed into his rose bushes. But they had the sidewalk scrubbed before tourists came, so nobody would know. Luke started shaking his head no, but he couldn't stop. But Jen said there'd be too many people to shoot. She said there'd be thousands. Luke protested as if Jen's words could change what he was hearing. Our Jen had too much faith in the bravery of her fellow hidden, Jen's father said. Luke flinched. I told her I couldn't go, he said. I told her it's not my fault. No, Jen's dad said quietly. And you couldn't have stopped her. It's not your fault. There were plenty of other people who deserved the blame. They probably would have shot 1,000, 15,000. They didn't care. His face twisted. Luke thought he had never seen such pain, and even time Matthew dropped a sledgehammer on his foot. Tears began to spill down Jen's father's face. What I don't understand is why did she do this children's crusade? She wasn't stupid. We've been warning about her, about the population police all of her life. Did she really think this rally would work? He said. Yeah, Luke assured him. Then, unbidden, the last words she'd spoken came back to him. We can hope. After she'd told him hope was worthless. Maybe she knew the rally would fail. Maybe she even knew she'd probably die. He remembered the first day he met her, when she cut her hand to cover the drops of his blood on the carpet. There was something strange in Jen he couldn't quite understand that made her willing to sacrifice herself to help others, or try to. I think at first she thought the rally would work, Luke told Jen's dad. And then even she wasn't sure, so she still had to go. She wouldn't call it off. Why? Jen's dad said. He was sobbing. Did she want to die? No, Luke said. She wanted to live, not die, not hide, live. The words played over and over again in his brain. Not hide, live, not hide, live. As long as he held on to them, he felt like Jen was there. She just left the room for a minute to get more potato chips, maybe, and soon she'd be back to lecture him again about how they both deserved a better life than hiding. He could believe it was her voice echoing in his ears. But if he let go, let the words stop for a minute, he was lost. He felt like the whole world was spinning away from him and he was all alone. He wanted to cry out, Jen, come back, as if she could hear him, and stop the spinning and come to him. As if from a great distance, Luke heard Jen's father heave a sigh and blow his nose in a businesslike way. You may not be ready to hear this, he said, but... Dizzily, Luke raised his head and listened half-heartedly. When you logged into that chat room, Jen's father said, a buzzer went off in a room in Population Police headquarters. They're monitoring the chat room very closely. They found it after the rally. I've managed to cover up things about Jen, but they'll trace this message back to our computer. The Population Police are backlogged right now, following leads from the rally, so I should have a day or two to come up with a plausible-sounding explanation, but if they investigate this too carefully, you may be in danger. More than usual? Luke said sarcastically. Jen's dad took the question seriously. Yes, they will be actively looking for you. They'll search every house around this one. It wouldn't take them too long to find you. A chill ran down Luke's spine. So he would die, just like Jen. Or not like her. She had gone bravely. He would be caught like a mouse in its hole. But if you let me, Jen's dad continued, I can get you a fake ID. You can be miles away before they come looking. You'd do that for me? Luke said. Why? Because of Jen. But how? I've got connections. You see, Jen's dad hesitated. I work for the Population Police. Ooh, interesting. Okay, chapter 28. Luke began screaming and couldn't stop. Suddenly, his brain didn't seem to have control whatsoever over what his body did. He felt his legs spring up and propel him towards Jen's dad. He saw his own hand grab for the gun and wrestle it away. He heard a voice he barely recognized his own scream again. No, no, no! Stop, Jen's dad yelled. Stop, you little fool, before you get us both killed. Somehow the gun was in Luke's hand. Jen's dad lunged at him, and Luke could picture Jen's dad tackling him, just as Jen had tackled him all those months ago. But this time Luke stepped to the side at the last moment, and Jen's dad crashed uselessly into the far wall. Luke pointed this gun at him and struggled to hold it steady. Jen's dad turned around slowly. Go ahead, shoot me, he said. Luke was holding his hands up in the air. I might even welcome the chance to stop missing Jen, but it'd be a mistake. I swear to you, in the name of everything that's sacred, in Jen's name, I'm on your side. Jen's dad stared into Luke's eyes, waiting. Luke felt a surge of pride that he'd gotten the upper hand, that he'd earned the right to decide what would happen next. But how could he know what was right? Surely Jen's own father wouldn't lie in her name, would he? Luke squeezed his eyes shut, then he lowered the gun to his side. Good, Jen's dad said, audibly releasing his breath. Luke let Jen's dad walk towards him, gently take the gun and lay it on the desk. I was going to explain, Jen's dad said, panting a little. He sat down. I work for the Population Police Headquarters. I don't agree with what they do. I try to sabotage them as much as I can. Sabotage means to mess up. Jen never understood either. Sometimes you have to work from inside enemy lines. Jen's dad talked and talked and talked, and Luke thought he was repeating everything he said 2 or 3 times, but it was okay because Luke's brain was functioning so slowly. He needed this extra help. Do you know much about history? Jen asked. Luke tried to remember if there were any history books among his family's collection in the attic. Did adventure stories so long ago count? He cleared his throat, just the books that Jen loaned me. Which ones? Luke pointed to the ones on the shelves above the computer. She gave me some articles, printouts on the computer. Jen's dad nodded. So you got propaganda from both sides, he said, and no truth. What do you mean? Luke asked. The government publications are trying to convince people of one thing, so they stretch the facts. And the underground is just as extreme in its own way, making statistics match the cause, so you know nothing. Jen said the stuff from the computer was true, Luke said defensively. Just saying her name made him wince. And now she was dead. How could she be dead? Jen's dad waved that away impatiently. She believed what she wanted to, but I'm afraid. He stopped, and Luke was afraid Jen's dad might start crying again. Then he swallowed hard and went on. I'm afraid I encouraged her. I passed along some slanted information. I wanted to give her hope that someday the population law would be repealed. I didn't know she'd. Luke knew he wouldn't be able to spare seeing Jen's dad break down again. So what should I know? What's the truth? The truth, Jen's dad muttered, catching on to those 2 words as though Luke had thrown them in the lifeline. He recovered himself quickly. Nobody knows. There's been too many lies for too long. Our government is totalitarian, and totalitarian governments never like the truth. That made no sense to Luke, but he let Jen's dad go on talking. Do you know about the famines? Luke nodded. Before that, our country believed in freedom and democracy and equality for all. Then the famines came, and again, famine, starvation. And the government was overthrown. There were riots in every city over food. Many, many people were killed. When General Sherwood came to power, he promised law and order, food for all. But then, that was all people wanted, and all that they got. Luke squinted, trying to understand. This was grown-up talk, pure and simple. No, it was worse than grown-up talk. He was used to, because all of his parents ever talked about was corn harvest and bills and the likelihood of a frost in the end of May. Those Luke understood. Governments being overthrown, cities rioting, this was beyond his comprehension. Barons got more, he blurted. Then he blushed because it sounded so rude. Jen's dad laughed. True. You noticed. I know it's not fair, and I'm not proud of it, but government officials made a conscious decision to allow one class of people to have special privileges. Jen probably introduced you to junk food, didn't she? Luke nodded. That's a good example. Officially it's illegal, but nobody ever got arrested for supplying barons with junk food, which is mighty convenient considering that the all-powerful government officials are barons. The cynicism in his voice sounded so much like Jen that Luke almost gave in to his grief again, but he forced himself to focus on what Jen's dad was saying. The government justifies keeping everybody else in poverty because people seem to work the hardest when they're right on the edge of survival, he continued. The government does try to make sure that most people, the ones who cooperate, do survive. If you've heard your parents talking about other farmers, you'll know nobody loses their farms anymore, but also nobody ever makes enough to live comfortably. Luke thought about his parents' constant worries about money. Was this all unnecessary? Were they just being manipulated? He felt a spark of anger, but he buried that too because he had other questions. But even barons have to follow population law, he said. Is that because, he gulped, because it's necessary? Were there too many people here? Are there? Probably not, Jen's dad said. If food had been distributed fairly, if people hadn't panicked, if we had good leaders being honest about everyone's need for cooperation, we could have survived the crisis without curtailing anyone's rights. And now, it shouldn't be a problem if some people choose to have 3 or 4 kids, as long as some other people choose to have none. But the population law became General Sherwood's proudest accomplishment. That's why even barons aren't exempt. He points to that and says, see how much control I have over my people's lives? Okay, so now we're going to continue the rest on another sheet. So it's wrong, Luke said, trying to grasp the point. Yes, I believe so, Jen's dad said. Luke felt a strange sense of relief that it wasn't truly wrong for him to exist, just illegal. For the first time he'd read those government books, he could see those two things being separate. Maybe that's why he'd been too scared to go to the rally. If he truly believed the way that Jen had, then he might have gone. And would he have been killed as she was? It was too confusing and scary to think about. Jen's father looked at his watch. I need to get back to work. I can't hide so much. If you want it, I can have a fake ID for you by tomorrow night. In the meantime, I advise you to. He broke off. Luke knew why. A sound from his worst nightmares pounding on the door, and the command, "Open up! Population police!" Okay, so what I need you guys to do now is you're going to be going on to Socrative and completing a quiz. All right, take care.